Five Rings Podcast, your weekly amateur sports and Olympic sports show with Duane, Rollins, and Kevin Laramee. And now, without further ado, here's Duane Rollins.
And welcome to the Five Rings Podcast regular edition. Kevin, in exactly 7 days' time, in exactly 1 week time, we'll be recording the last, regular Five Rings, or will be the first daily Five Rings. I'm not too sure which, but I do know this, that I will have just finished watching a mixed curling contest in the Olympic Games exactly a week from today.
Thursday, February 8th at 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning is the first televised Olympic event for us here. It's going to be the mixed curling event, and Duane will be watching. On Friday will be the opening ceremonies at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. And just by the way, if you're brand new to the Five Rings Podcast, our times are Eastern Time. Duane is located in Toronto. I'm located in Montreal. We live on the Eastern Time, but we will be based, of course, in PyeongChang time, which is plus 14 hours. We got it figured out, Duane. It took us a few months, but we figured it out. We'll just do shows dailies at 10 a.m. 14 hours ahead. It's in the middle of the night. Nothing's going to happen. No more breaking news. We'll get all the news, and then we can make a show about it.
Yeah, well, it's 14 hours, right? So you basically split your times. So, it's 11 a.m. here right now. So you go 12 hours ahead, it's 11 p.m., and then add 2 hours. So to be right currently in the morning, 1 in the morning tomorrow in South Korea. So that's how you're going to get used to this, depending on what your time zone. We're GMT minus 5. So that's for those of you who are in Europe, you can understand that. So, it's not actually a bad time zone. We were sort of looking at it and figuring our schedule out yesterday, and I was like, you know what, this isn't too bad. Most of the stuff's going to happen in the evening here from 7 p.m. on, because 7 p.m. is 9 a.m. The next day over there, which will allow us to watch a lot of the events that take place in the a.m. hours during our prime time. I haven't looked in detail at the schedule, but I suspect what they've done is events that have a lot of interest in North America. The finals will be in the morning, Korean time, which will allow them to be in prime time.
Yeah. Well, that's what I figured I will do. I'll go to bed early, and I'll wake up 5:36, catch up on all the day's news, and be ready for 10. And that's going to be my schedule during the Olympics.
And mine's just to be up. That's just what's going to happen.
Yours is just going to sleep during the day and be up at 6 p.m., get your coffee, and get things ready for 7 p.m., which it would be 9 a.m. when things start.
Yeah, well, basically, when we do the show, as you think about it, it'll be done at midnight Korean time. So we're wrapping the day up. It's almost perfect for us because we regularly record when their day is literally ending. Like the last events will probably have ended about a half hour prior to that. You look at some of the stuff like the big air competition and the half pipe, and that they usually take place in the evening when people have had a chance to enjoy themselves at the mountain for a while.
If you go back to Rio, it was kind of tough for us for Rio because was it an hour ahead? So basically we're doing our show in the middle of the actual competitions themselves. So we're reviewing a third of that day and the day before, but the part that we missed. So it was kind of we're not actually reviewing days by day, so we're going by day, but it's half of one and quarter of the other. This time around, literally, every daily show will be at 10 a.m. in the morning. So whenever you're commuting, if you're working a little later, and you get at lunchtime. So just for your lunch break, when you go out and have your lunch at work, you have a wrap-up of what happened in the Olympics if you weren't able to watch. So I think it's a perfect time.
All right, and just in terms of what to expect, if you haven't been around with the Olympics, we will endeavor to go as daily throughout, even including weekends when we can. There will be a couple occasions during the games where we may have to do a double show, so we may have to skip a day just because of schedules and things like that. Typically, that would happen on the weekend, and I think probably Valentine's Day, which falls during the Olympics, might be one that we have to take off.
Either Valentine's or the day after, we might take one day off there. But the thing is. It's easy for us now to go live like we are here in a moment's notice. So we might be able to maybe do it earlier on Valentine's Day morning to get away with it. And the next day we'll take a day off. We do have lives and significant others that we kind of have to think about sometimes. But it is primarily, I will be Olympic focused, literally during those. I took a week off. I'm off from the 10th to the 18th. So guess what I'll be doing?
Exactly, and I'm going to be doing nothing but watching. All right, in terms of the show today, we're going to talk a little bit about the CAS decision yesterday to reinstate the results, I should say, of 26 Russian athletes, which will affect the medal counts of a lot of athletes that felt that they were going to get medals given to them after the fact that now are not again. We're going to talk about that, and after that, we're going to do a bit of a general preview for the games itself. If you want a more specific detailed preview, they're rolling out. There's going to be, I think there's probably going to be 2 or 3 that go up today, depending on Kevin's ability to do that. There's 2 of them. There's one of them in the tank right now, and then I will be doing
one's coming
2
out,
more as soon as we're done here.
After this show. So you'll get the 5 Rings podcast regular, and right after you get the preview too.
Which is figure skating in this case, and then I will be recording the 2 speed skating, 2 long track speed skating, so the long distance and the sprints is what I'll be breaking them up in today, and then Kevin's got a couple coming that he's going to do. By and large, we're looking to have those previews, the detailed previews, done by Wednesday, so you basically the day before the competition will start, and the more specific general preview will be this show here right now. But we should talk, I guess, about the Russian stuff.
We basically never even talked about the 169th athlete that were allowed to go in Russia, which is barely under the amount that were in Vancouver. So, with Russia being banned, they're not banned. Just a few of them are. And another decision like this here, that a tribunal, a court, a judicial system decided that, I don't know, there was some maybe circumstances, there was some maybe evidence that were tempered. There was a shadow of a doubt. And good lawyers were able to get things overturned. And you know what? The one thing I think it really highlights is that it's just like the criminal system. It's never really over. And even if you're able to catch it, even if you catch the criminal, even if you're like watching CSI and it's a 45th minute into the show and you know they found the criminal, well, in real life, he got money, he hires good lawyers, and they get away with it.
If the glove doesn't fit.
The glove doesn't
fit.
Any rate. The glove doesn't fit. Oh, isotoners. OJ.
Yeah, look, I mean, what the CAS made the decision on was basically, it was they didn't feel that there was enough evidence to absolutely prove the systemic abuse that Icarus and other people have pretty much shown us it with great deal of detail. There was evidence that was given. The IOC is not happy with the decision. They feel that the evidence that they presented was credible enough to disqualify these athletes. The IOC is making strong words that just because they have had their results reinstated does not mean that they will have an invitation extended to participate in PyeongChang. So these athletes that they believe cheated are likely still not going to participate moving forward. But they've had their bans rolled back from, in many cases, some of them have been removed completely. In other cases, they've had lifetime bans rolled back to a single Olympic ban. It just basically couldn't prove that there was systemic system-wide
doping,
abuse, manipulation. Yeah,
well,
that's what they didn't prove.
But those instances, those 26 or 28, those cases, is some of them were high profile. Talk about the cross-country skier that not even, his name escapes me, and I'm already looking at the future, so the past is in my rearview mirror, so I don't necessarily want to give him more airtime by saying the names of those athletes. But yeah, it's the athletes that had good lawyers and were like, well, you know what? It's not sure. There's a possibility that this is circumstantial evidence and that my client is innocent. And if there's a shadow of a doubt, you need to acquit. What is it? If the glove doesn't fit, you need to acquit.
Acquit. Yeah, that was the rhyme from OJ back in the day. Yes. Look, I don't know what more to say about this. We have talked about this in detail. If you have discovered us through the previews and you are just now starting to listen to us, we have a very recent archived edition of the show where we talked about Icarus in detail, talked about doping in detail for about 45 minutes to an hour. We went right into it. Kind of all the words that we wanted to say about that were said then. I don't really know what to say about this other than it's unfortunate for the athletes that did participate clean that maybe had this taken away, but hey, you got to move forward at this point, and hopefully they will find ways to not have this happen again. That's all really those of us that care about the Olympic movement can look at right now, and it's hard sometimes it's hard when, I've been doing previews and I've been using the term, OAR. OAR, meaning Olympic athletes of Russia, rather than Russia throughout it. So that says it all, right?
I've seen IAR and OAR, so we'll go with one of those for sure. And before we take a break and come back and talk about positives and talk about like the future and talk about the next few weeks and actual names of competitions, and that's the fun stuff, right? But before we get there, you mentioned Icarus, and there's a great podcast that just came out. Lance Armstrong has his own podcast, and it's actually like wide open. It's not PG. He's being honest about everything, and it's kind of amazing. And his guest in the last 2 weeks is Brian Fogel, director and the cyclist and one of the protagonists in Icarus. It's a great discussion. Things are open, talking about not just Russia, talking about China, talking about the States, talking about Armstrong, talking about cycling doping. I deeply recommend the podcast of Lance Armstrong with Brian Fogel that just came out yesterday.
And there was a lot of chatter about that, and I certainly am going to, when I go out for my my run later on today, I will be absolutely having that on as what I'm listening to as I do that. Some people listen to music. I listen to podcasts about doping. So, we all have our own thing.
To each its own. We'll be right back talking about athletes. Eight days a week is not enough, Duane, to tell you that I'm not ready for those games. And 8 days is when it all starts. Technically it's 7, but officially it's 9. And to start the preview aspect, Duane, we do have a few medal locks. Not necessarily talking about colors of the medals, but if you have a place where you put money on athletes, if that thing even exists, those would be our choices of medal winners.
Yeah, well, precisely. Yeah, when it comes to we're going to do 3 international each and 3 Canadian each to talk about what we're calling medal locks. Now, don't quote me because things can happen, especially in the international one where I've taken a little outside the box approach to talk about my international athletes. Well, one's pretty much, I think, a lock for at least one. The Canadian ones, I think, are pretty close too. But yeah, that's where we're going with this. So look, Kevin, just really quickly, if you really, really, really want to watch Olympic stuff, in 5 days, there's some stuff on the Olympic feeds on the in terms of training and the luge runs and things like that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you just reminded me of one of my worst things that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Well,
watching the
that
luge
was unfortunate.
the morning of Vancouver. Yeah, so I saw that live. That was my Vancouver moment. Duane, should we start international or should we start local?
Let's go. We usually go international first, so let's start with there. Kevin, I'll let you start first. What's your first quote-unquote medal lock internationally for these Winter Olympic Games?
Well, we're talking about medal locks. We're talking about countries that has a history in a certain sport, an athlete that has a certain body of work in a certain sport and experience and recent results. Those things go very well together when it's cross-country skiing and Norway. And usually you have names that I will butcher, and I will give it my best right now. Martin Jonsrud Sundby. He is one of the favorites, not just on mass starts and other, he will be in the team relay. He will do the 15K, the 50K. The 50K I got somebody else picked up for, so I'm going to talk about that one a bit later. And if you can read between the lines, you know exactly who I am talking about. But for this one, it's the 15K mass start. And Martin Jonsrud Sundby is my medal lock for Norway. At least a bronze, but I think he's going to get the gold. But he is one of my lock here. Talking about Norway, talking about conditions in South Korea, Duane, that might be as frigid as minus 11 degrees Celsius, which is not that cold if you're from here. It's just a normal Saturday in January. But if you're talking about the Olympic Games, usually it's close to the point of 0 degrees Celsius. So minus 11, it's a cold temperature for a cross-country race. But the Norwegian, especially Martin, will be up for it.
Well, you mentioned that the last couple Olympics, Winter Olympics, and the next one occurring, we basically had springtime conditions for us throughout it, which is going to make an effect. I did the Alpine previews, and that was a big part of it. Is that what the skiers are most excited about? The mountain is very technical. If you haven't listened to this already, I won't spoil too much of it, but it's a technical mountain more than a speed slope mountain. But what their skiers are excited about is that they anticipate good natural snow for the first Olympics in a while. I just
like, never mind slush, ice, just like cold, frozen slopes.
Yeah, because I'm a geek, I rewatched parts of the 2010 curling final, the men's curling final the other day. I was just watching stuff. Yeah, no, that's who else does that, but I did.
I watched
at any rate.
ski jumping
they did
yesterday from like Torino, so we're good. We're good.
Yeah, they did an establishing shot of the area around the curling facility in Vancouver, and there was like 4 baseball fields that were like bright green and looked like they were in middle season condition, and that was what the Olympics were in Vancouver. You remember there were lots of delays with the snow. That won't be happening in Korea.
You had the Whitecaps practicing in those establishing shots like outside on the turf. That's how warm it was in Vancouver. But no, and that's another factor for sports like cross-country skiing. For sports that during the World Cup season, that's what you experience, right? And that's why I'm excited for those games. It's because it's like a big World Cup event adding in the middle of your season, and it's fine. It's not like a place that almost denatures the sport that you're doing. When we talked about even like the sliding aspect of Sochi, the track was not necessarily the best. It was not even safe enough on the top. They had to short it down because of conditions. Those are the things that won't necessarily happen in PyeongChang because it will be cold. It's that simple. It's a winter place, and I am pumped. You can tell.
All right. What I do fear for you a little bit, Kevin, when I have candy, I don't eat as much candy anymore as I used to. But let's say I occasionally will have like maybe a pack of Skittles, and I always divide them into colors. That could be my OCD, or it could be the fact that I like to save my favorite colors for last. And I feel
they say all the same thing, right? Okay, never mind.
I like the orange ones. I like the orange ones the most. I don't know why they find the orange Skittles very good. But at any rate, I kind of think that you, in many ways, are looking at the Olympics, saving your orange Skittles to last. And your orange Skittles are that 50K mass start. The last event of the games is the one I think you're most looking forward to.
Yeah, well, it is. And I don't want to take time off of the preview, but it's a preview. We could talk about things. For me, it's because it's like cycling, right? I'm a cyclist. That's what I do. I did one actual big event last year, and I won that damn event, 50K. Okay, fine. If you're looking at the video, I'm not the skinniest guy, but I got good legs. So that was fun last year, but it's like a cycling event. So it's everybody starts at once, and there's tactics. It's not just like, oh, who's the fastest for 50K? No one can just run or ski full clip for 50K and not die. So it's like literally, how do you pace your effort? How do you work with others? How do you use your timing? There's like hills and slopes as well in cross country skiing, and it's literally the cycling tactics. That's why I love it. If you're a great climber, quote unquote, on your skis, and there's a small hill and you think you can detach yourself from the rest of the pack on that hill, and you make your attack, and that's why I love it. It's like a long endurance effort. It's a marathon on skis with tactics of a cycling event. It's awesome.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to move on to my first international pick. And look, a lot of the alpine skiing conversation heading into these games and during the broadcast is going to be focused on the great American skier Lindsey Vonn, but that is not who I'm picking. Lindsey Vonn is obviously going to be a story in this. What will likely be her last Olympics. One of the greatest skiers of all time, but maybe a skier that underperformed in the Olympics for various reasons that were sometimes not completely in her control. There's a lot of injury stuff that happened there. So she's going to have one last shot, and she has some good medal chances, I think, in the speed events. But I'm going to pick her teammate as the person to watch. That's Michaela Schifrin, who's probably the best overall female skier in the world right now. She has medal chances in all of the disciplines, both technical and speed. And I believe that at the end of this game that there will be a baton that is passed between Schifrin and Vonn in terms of who is going to be the face of American skiing. And it also, I think, is going to be doubly so when you consider that the U.S. men's team is really not that strong right now. So Schifrin is going to be the face of skiing in the biggest country in the world that broadcasts the Winter Olympics and in prime time and considers it a major event. So I suspect that, also combining into this, that the American figure skating team is probably at a low point of its history as well. So Schifrin might not just be the face of skiing for the U.S. during the games. I think Schifrin will be the face the U.S. in the games.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point here that you're making, especially you're talking about the mountain men's side. Long gone are the days of Bodie Miller, right? There's no superstar, at least on that side of things. If you're looking at ski cross, snowboard cross, and on the action sports type of skiing and snowboarding events for the United States, that's where they are the favorites. But no, you're right. It's a very good choice. And I did not pick Lindsey Vonn in my choices because I think it's going to be difficult. And you mentioned her. A lot of it is with timing too, and not just timing of when the event is, not timing of your peaking your form, your development, your health to that day, but it's the weather of that day is that important as well. And if Lindsey Vonn in downhill, her specialty and where she got her advantage is how strong she is, how strong her legs are, and she was able, when it's a very hard surface, to carve and get that edge, get that angle, to get that fraction, 10,000ths of a second ahead of her competition. And that's one of her great attributes as an athlete. And when it's not that cold, once again, she can't use that advantage because she can't dig in the ice. There's no ice. So it's little details like this that, yes, but I think you're right. And we're not doing previews here for that event particularly. I wouldn't be surprised if, example, Schifrin just beats Lindsey Vonn, and then there's a great moment, and Lindsey Vonn shakes her hand and be like, yes, I'm with you. And you here's the ball, you take it further.
All right. Yes, exactly. And the alpine skiing is always the highlight for me. I'm a longtime ski race fan. As much as I love those new sports, those action sports, as you just called it. And another, as a quick aside, the fact that they've been in the Olympics for a while, like snowboard and stuff like that, you're starting to see less of a dominance of the traditional X game countries and a move away. The U.S., for instance, is no longer sure things and stuff like half pipe and things like that. And I think that's beneficial for the sport. But all right, let's move on and get your second international pick.
Well, speaking of half pipe and speaking of international and speaking of not U.S. favorites, I've talked about the steep Olympic game. A steep game and an Olympic game. It's a game of like snowboard, skiing, half pipe, grinding, doing big air with Olympic now. So. Sorry? Yeah, and slope style and ski cross and all that. But I've been playing this game for a few years, and I play with one guy called Kevin, of course. But he's called Kevin Rollins, and he exists for real. He's a Frenchman, and he's one of the favorites in the half-pipe event at the Olympics. Kevin Rollins, one of the instances of Olympic athletes building his brand with fashion, with equipment, gear that you can use, that you can buy to go snowboard. It looks amazing, and his name is Kevin, so he is amazing. But outside of that, he's one of the favorite Frenchmen half-pipe. It will be a spectacular competition, and I am putting Kevin Rollins on my medal lock. He is predicted to win gold, maybe win silver, but I'm predicting he wins at least some metal. He will wear some metal around his waist in PyeongChang. Kevin Rollins from France in the men's halfpipe.
You are going to see a lot of snowboard and freestyle in these games. They are just spectacular sports. And as I talked about it in the preview that's already out there, that big air event in snowboard, I think that's going to be the event that gets most tongues a wagging during this. The air and the size of it is just spectacular. YouTube it if you haven't had a chance. All right. I'm going to move on to my second international pick. And this one's a bit outside the box, but as I said a moment ago, the U.S. and figure skating, that's been synonymous for many Olympics. They've always been a power along with the Russians, the Soviets, and now the Olympic athletes from Russia. And certainly the OAR is going to have a strong team in this as well. But the U.S. is in a bit of a downslope. So I think a lot of their medal hopes are kind of long shots. But there's one young guy, just 18 years of age on the men's side, in what is a very wide open men's field. Javier Fernandez is your likely favorite there, the defending world champion, but is by no means a lock. But the one kid that a lot of Americans are really putting their hopes on in the previews that I'm listening to that are outside my own, and certainly the figure skating experts are suggesting that this is going to be a superstar in the event in years to come that may get a major breakthrough. And here is a young skater by the name of Nathan Chen. Nathan Chen, I compared him in the preview that you're going to hear later today to Elvis Stoico, in the sense that he is, and Canadians will remember Elvis Stoico, in the sense that he's a spectacular jumper, a spectacular athlete that's very muscular in his skating, but has a bit of a weakness on the artistic side. So that's his Achilles heel. If he can match match is the wrong way to put it. If he can come anywhere close to the top man artistically and still land his jumps, and he puts 4 or 5 combination quads into his routine, he is the best jumper in the competition and will be the most spectacular skater to watch during these games. He's going to go big or go home type thing, though, right? He may fall 3 times in his long routine and fall to 12th. But if he hits it all, so medal walks may be the wrong way to put this, but if he hits them all, he is absolutely going to be someone who will emerge as a star. And if he hits them all, he'll probably win the gold, because it's a very wide open men's field that there's probably 10, 11 men that you can make an argument for that could potentially win this thing. So that's going to be fun if you like figure skating, and even if you're just a casual observer of the sport and you like the jumps. I think Chen's going to be a guy that you're going to really enjoy watching, Kevin.
No, absolutely, and I will keep an eye on him for sure. All right, let's go with my third international medal lock. And this one is a récidiviste, we would say in French. He did it before. He's going to do it again. He's a repeat offender in medal winning, Duane. And that's Kamil Stok from Poland in the ski jump, K120. Kamil Stok is one of the predicted gold medalists of this game. And I would not be surprised at all if he wins gold once again at PyeongChang 2018. He is my medal lock for that competition. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to win both, like the K19 and K120, but I'm only going to choose him for the 120, how spectacular it is. Kamil Stok, if you have one medal that you can guarantee that you want to put money on, if you have to put like big chunk of change on one guy to win medal in PyeongChang, I would go with Kamil Stok from Poland in the ski jump.
And those Poles, they've really emerged. The Finns are traditionally the great ski jumping nation, but and certainly they still have some athletes in there. By the way, that's the other event that's going to start before the opening ceremonies. The long hill, the big hill qualifying rose just a couple hours before the opening ceremonies, Kevin. So I believe that Sportsnet here in Canada will be covering that, so you can set your DVR now if you want.
It's already done.
All right. Kevin, my third international choice is going to be a team event, and I'm going to pick the Finnish hockey teams, both men's and women's. The women, I think, are pretty much a guaranteed lock to win bronze because they always win bronze in every major competition. Although I will say this about the women before I move on and talk about why I want to talk about the Finnish men's as my pick to win the gold medal in this in the hockey tournament that no one really knows how to predict. The women actually beat Canada last year at the World Championships for the first time ever. It was in the prelims. It was in the group stage. For those that don't know, and the hockey preview is out now if you want to listen to it in detail, but for those that don't know, the way hockey is set up on the women's side is that the top 4 teams are in the top group and they compete for placement, while the bottom 4 teams compete for the last 2 positions in the knockout round. So in that first placement round, the Finns beat the Canadians for the first time ever, which forced Canada to go through a quarterfinal. Canada did get revenge in the knockout round and ultimately lost to the United States in the gold medal final as per usual. But the Finnish women have improved to the point where it's not completely out of the question that on maybe 1 out of every 30 times they play, and trust me, that's an improvement over the past, they might have a chance to upset Canada or the United States. So I do think that they have pretty much established themselves as the clear number 3 in the world, and there's not much chance, I don't think, that anyone else, especially because the number 4 ranked team in the world right now on the women's side is the OAR, and I think that they're going to be a disaster in terms of their ability to overcome sort of the distractions around them. But I wanted to talk about the men on the Finnish side. And when I tried to handicap the men's tournament, I ultimately kept coming back to Finland as your gold medal favorites. And I look at this for a couple different reasons. First off, when it's a best-on-best tournament, Finland's always a tough out. They're never the favorite. They're always in as a bronze medal kind of contending team that can do it on the day. They always have great goaltending in Finland. That's always been a strength. And goaltending in a short run tournament, if they get hot, just ask the Czech Republic, can go all the way to the top. But the biggest thing that I kept coming back to is the amount of players that are playing for the same KHL team. There is a Finnish team in the KHL that about 11 members of the Finnish men's national team all play for. That familiarity, I think, is going to be key in what is going to be a bizarre men's hockey tournament. So that is why I am picking Finland to win the gold medal in men's hockey for the first time in their history. Whether they view it as a big a deal as winning it outside, well, a best-of-best tournament, I don't know, but I do think that Finland's going to be awfully tough because of the familiarity and the fact that if you look at, Canada is decimated. I don't think Canada's a medal contender on the men's side. I really don't. Sorry, guys. Russia, OAR, the distractions around that, the fact that they always implode anyway is going to be difficult for them to overcome. Sweden is also in with a chance. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a repeat of Turin and we have a Swedish-Finnish final, but this time the Finns coming out on top. So that's my men's hockey prediction, Kevin.
Yeah, because as much as we like to talk about the KHL and how a lot of Russian players are playing there, well, the best Russians are still playing in the NHL, and they still won't be there. So I think you might be onto something there.
All right, fair enough. And we've done 3H. I'm trying to keep this straight, so we're going on to Canada now.
Let's go to Canada. And
we'll do that little hip-hop bumper I got going. There you go.
It's there. We already played it, but we're going to play it in the background while we talk over it. So, Duane, you start with your first Canadian medal lock.
All right. If you read the curling previews, other than mine, you'll note that Canada is not considered a medal contender or a gold medal contender in the mixed event. The mixed event is making its debut in PyeongChang. It is not an event that is played a great deal at the highest level in Canada, and that's generally why they're not putting them in as favorites. There are some weirdness to the mixed event. There's only 2 players in that. They throw 5 rocks each. You place rocks at the start of each end. They have something called a power play, which I'm going to let the curling broadcasters explain that one to you because it's hard to articulate in words unless you can
So one of them is going to the penalty box and the other teams have a power play, so they play 2 curlers instead of 1 for like 2 minutes, no? For like one rock? No, for like... So you have to throw the rock, then get up, run, sweep your own rock. No, that would be an amazing curling event. Can you imagine? You have the guy or the woman or the man there sliding and releasing the rock, then getting up, trying to sprint, sliding. Oh, he almost bails. Oh, he's stable. Okay, he starts sweeping. Oh, that would be amazing.
Precisely. Yes, it would be kind of fun, but no, it's you place a rock in a scoring position with a block in front of it. But at any rate, that's neither here nor there right now. As I said, we'll let the people that have the illustrators on TV explain that one to you during the broadcast, which again, a week today. But I think the team of Caitlin Laws and John Morris, who came into their own during the mixed curling trials and are 2 incredibly accomplished curlers. Both of them are gold medalists. Caitlin Laws was the 3rd on Jennifer Jones' team, which was, if you remember my Sochi game previews, and you can go back in our archives way back and listen to them if you want, or don't listen to the sound quality. Kevin will not like that. Again, wine glass balancing, an iPad balanced on a wine glass is how I used to record those things straight into my iPad. At any rate, she was that team was dominant in Sochi, and Caitlin Laws was a big reason why. And then her partner is John Morris, who is the 2010 gold medalist, also the 3rd on Kevin Martin's team that won the gold medal then. Both of these players are known to be amongst the best hitters, the best strikers in curling, in the world of curling. They are elite players on the men's and women's side, respectively. They, again, are shot makers. They are the greatest shot makers, and Morris especially has takeout weight that's really elite. That is just not something that a lot of these mixed curlers that typically participate at the World Championship level and are considered the favorites in this because of their experience at that typically do. I do think that there will be an adjustment period for them to get used to playing the mixed game and some of the intricacies in it, but they kind of got that out of their system at the trials where they didn't play particularly well in group play, but then got hot in the playoffs and went through as their skills and their abilities started to show themselves. So I think those that are picking Canada to only win 2 of the 3 medals in curling might want to rethink that. I think that at the very least, Morris and Laws are medal contenders, if not gold medal contenders in this mixed event, which is going to be interesting. And I think by the end of this, what you're going to see over the next 4 years in this country, in Canada, where curling is king, is a lot more attention going to be played to this mixed game. And you may even see some mixed specialists evolve out of Canada to really contend at that world championship level, because it's another gold medal opportunity now. And that really changed the men's and the women's side of things, and it's going to change the mixed side of things too. So this is going to be a fun one. I'm actually looking forward to the mixed curling competition almost more than any other competition in the Olympics, because of that kind of lack of predictability and sort of how it's an emerging thing coming in.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And that's another medal for Canada in curling. So hey, why not? My medal lock for Canada to start with here is a returning Virtue and Moyer in ice dancing. The mix, of course. And I do feel that they will return to their former glory. Either win or finish second. They are predicted to finish second. The artists formerly known as representing Russia, so the princes of this world, but in Russian, are going to be favored there too. But I do have a feeling that Virtue and Moyer will. The flag bearers. I know they're not. They're flag bearers. Yeah, they are the flag bearers. The flag bearers will win a medal. They'll disregard the flag bearers' curse,
which doesn't exist anymore anyway. But yes,
exactly, it does not exist, and they will win a medal. And you can put this in the bank.
Well, yeah, I think they're pretty much a lock to win a medal. It's interesting that both Tessa and Scott and Patrick Chan have both kind of stayed outside of the Grand Prix circuit for the most part. They've each done one event, which is kind of less than you'd normally see in a given season, to focus on getting that routine, their Olympic routine down pat, which is a bit of a risk because the judges don't get to see it, but it's also could pay off if they nail it. So it's kind of an interesting one there. It's as you said, the couple that is the gold world champion and probably the favorite. They represent France now. They're going to be tough to beat, but Moyer and Tessa are going Tessa Virtue, which is a great name. You can't make a name up better than Tessa Virtue, right?
She has to go into politics. Come on, she has to go into politics. And
yes, exactly. So,
come on.
Yeah,
vote for Virtue.
I would call them a lock.
Come on, vote for Virtue. Who's not gonna vote for her? I'm voting for Virtue. Virtue. Yeah, I got it. Yep, 7 of you. I'm voting for you.
America. No,
you need some Virtue right now. That's something else.
Exactly. Anyway, yeah, no, I'd put them as a lock for a silver for sure, and will be right there within points, if not winning the gold, then certainly right up there for the. Yeah, that's not a bad pick. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my second Canadian pick, and that's Mr. Kingsbury, the mogul skier who has won everything, the Golden Globe, maybe the best Canadian men's mogul skier of all time. Jennifer Heil might have some conversation on the women's side of things too, if you're talking about both genders, but in terms of Kingsbury, 24? In terms of
he's 23, 24, insane. Before finishing second 2 weekends ago, I think he won 13, 14 straight World Cup event. Like one straight events, like 13. That's insane.
Yeah, unless he blows a ski off, which in skiing is possible. Well, the technology is getting better and better. You see it less often now. But unless something weird like that happens, this is as close to a guaranteed medal lock for Canada as you're going to have in these games. And this is a guy that if he wins gold and wins it dominatingly like he has in the circuit, traditionally might finally get his due in this country. He was shortlisted this year for the Lou Marsh Award, which is Canada's Athlete of the Year overall. It's kind of a weird little award that looks at all sports in both genders and names one athlete, and it's a kind of a fun conversation that happens each year. And he got some consideration this year for the first time ever, but he kind of is ignored outside of Olympics, like many guys that do his discipline. And he is by far your gold medal favorite in the moguls, and moguls always leads it off too. So if he can go off and put a performance down, just like we've seen the last two Olympics, Canada can get off with one of those great starts, and there's no sort of marshmallowing, snowballing of kind of doubts rolling in than maybe some of those predictions, which I've seen as high as 29, 30 medals for Canada, which could potentially win the medal standings, which is absurd for some long-term Canadian listeners. Some guys who's watched Canada in the Olympics for my whole life. The fact that they might win the medal standings, I can't even wrap my head around that. But if they can get that gold right off the start, then the momentum starts to fly, and maybe you get a couple upsets in there. You never know. But yeah, Kingsbury is my Canadian medal lock for sure in this instance.
My second lock for Canada is Max Parrot. Max Parrot, World Cup winner in big air, one of the favorites for big air. I think there's Sébastien Toutin as well. That is another favorite for Canada, but Max Parrot has been the one with the biggest pedigree recently on the World Cup and X Game and Dew Tour stages, and quite interested to see him perform at the big air. First time it's in the Olympics. It will be a spectacular event. It is literally spectacular seeing them fly tens, if not hundreds of feet in the air, landing, making twists, rodeos, like 1080s, or even worse than 1080s now. It's crazy the amount of revolutions and spin those snowboarders get on their jump, and I think Max Parrot can win the whole damn thing. If not, he'll get a medal for sure, but I do have Max as one of my locks for Canada for a medal. We usually do pretty good at brand new events, and I think this time will be the same.
There is an outside chance at the elusive medal sweep in that event for Canada. So, yeah, watch that one carefully. I wouldn't call that a lock anywhere near the medal sweep. I'm saying that, but let's be clear. But there are three very strong athletes in that competition that all are medal contenders. And, Michael Marsty, the other member that we didn't mention there, who's coming off a horrific injury and is going to be a great story in that as well, regardless of what he does. So certainly Big Air is one that, as I've mentioned about 4 times now, I very much can't wait to see on both sides of the gender. There are medal contenders, gold medal contenders for Canada. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch just generally, and a lot of fun because we're going to have cheering interest in it. So that's great. All right, my third medal lock is the 2-time defending gold medals in the women's bobsled, Miss Humphreys, Kaylee Humphreys, who was the closing ceremony flag bearer in Sochi, who is an absolute warrior, who has come from behind 2 Olympics a row on the final run, which is ice for veins, ice in the veins, if you can do that in bobsled, which doesn't see a lot of comebacks. I think that she gets it done. She becomes the first Canadian to ever win 3 consecutive Olympic gold medals. And I don't count her out for a 4th one in 4 years' time either. This is the type of athlete that she is. Maybe, arguably, Canada's greatest female athlete of all time. She is that strong.
I would go as far as maybe say she's the best bobsleigh ever in the world, in the history of Canada. Like in front of Pierre Lueders. Like, that's how great her career and her run has been lately. And the interesting thing with bobsleigh too is we've seen the men and the women being together and competing, and she's done pretty damn good in that department too. So yeah, disregard the sex, she might be the best driver ever in the history of Canada in bobsled
for sure. And like I said, Canada has only recently become a winter Olympic power. It's only been since probably Turin that they, you could call them that, right? And in that time, we maybe, some of us, if you're 20 years old out there or something, and you're 24 even, you may not remember when Canada was 3-4 medals in the Olympic Games. The fact that we have someone set up to do something historic like this is really quite remarkable for those of us that are long-term observers, and it's still hard to get used to. On the podium works. Apparently, funding your athletes properly works. Who knew, Kevin?
Yeah, who knew? All right. My number 1 athlete for Canada, my number 1 medal lock here, Alex Harvey, 50-kilometer mass start for the man. He finished 2nd in the World Cup last week in that event. I do have a feeling he might go all the way this time, or at least 2nd, or maybe 3rd. But the little kid from Saint-Féréol-les-Neiges, son of a legend, cult hero in Canada in the world of cross-country skiing, Pierre Harvey, Alex Harvey, the son, might be the best cross-country skier this country has ever made. he had some troubles a few years ago with blood distribution in his legs, and he was getting cramps, and more than cramps, he was losing force, strength in his legs late into performances, and he had a few operations done a few years ago. It took a long time to finally get, but it's literally they put bigger veins in his body, right? So hopefully the blood that will go through those veins will be icy, so ice blood in the veins, and he will be able to win, and I have the feeling he will. He's been peaking great. He's been performing great this year. He's peaking right now. He will be probably on the last day of the Olympics. One of the best moments of the Canada's Olympics. Can you imagine a Canadian winning one of the now king events, call it whatever you like. One of the greatest events in the Winter Games is the 50K cross-country now, because it's just one of the only events. It's like the marathon, right? It's the only event on the damn day, so everybody's watching it, and I think Alex Harvey might win it all.
The only individual event, the men's hockey finals also goes that day, as does the curling final. But yes, the only individual event. But I'm old enough to remember Pierre competing and remember how excited Canadian commentators were when his father would get top 20s. And I don't want to dismiss the how impressive his father getting top 20s were. He had no support at all. He was basically self-funded.
He was training on his own track that he did in Saint-Féréol-les-Neiges. Like, that's how Pierre Harvey was able to perform. He created his own little training environment. It's crazy. No funding whatsoever.
Yeah, precisely. He used to, he'd get help from assistants from friends he met on the tour. They'd throw a bone to the Canadian, and he was the entire Canadian cross-country skiing for, Albertville, Lillehammer back then. That's who it was. And, we'd show these goes, they'd cut to cross-country, and you'd have the one guy that kind of knew him and go, you're trying to pump up the excitement around a top 20, which is hard to do in an Olympic context if you just are getting parachuted in. You just look at it and go, well, he's finishing 20th. Why do I care? But then when you know the whole story, you go 20th in the world for a guy that has no support whatsoever and is basically self-taught. That's incredible. And obviously the genetics were there because he passed them on to his son, who now could finish his father's legacy. And obviously I don't want to take anything away from Alex, but if he does get a medal, I think, Pierre has earned part of that medal as well. And it's a fitting legacy for a family that has that brought cross country through an era in this country where it was ignored completely until the point where we do have, on the women's side, we have an Olympic medalist, with a gold medalist, and Becky Scott, that's already out there. And there's not a spectacular history of it yet, but there is a history of it now, and there is a legacy that the next generation can build upon.
And it's a sport where you peak a little later than other sports. You don't peak at 18, 19, because it's not just about brute strength. It's about tactics. It's about experience. It's about knowing your body. It's about knowing what is your limit, your threshold. Are you able to sustain that effort, that pain, that lactic acid seizing your muscle through that hill while you're trying to climb it on your skis and it's minus 11? Is your mind strong enough to delay that suffering a little longer, just a little longer, just so you can get there? And that's what makes a difference. And you can usually peak better at those type of efforts late 20s, early 30s, and that's where Alex Harvey is coming. He's on his way there. He's on his way to his prime. He's still a young cross-country skier, and the results we've seen him do in Sochi and the result we've seen him do on World Cups were great, but it was all building for those Olympic Games right now and for the ones after. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win this one and win in 4 years, because that's his prime is now. Like Bjorn Dahlen, he was dropped the team this year for Norway. He's too old. But he was there, he's close to 50? That's how long you can cross-country ski if you have everything else surrounding you and giving you the best environment and everything else. You peak later.
Yeah, well, the mental strength to get through a marathon, too, when you look at any marathon sport. Claire Hughes' best performances of her career came when she was in her late 30s, too. She won her only gold medal in her late 30s. So, yeah, this is an event that certainly does lend itself to to a longer history of participation. And, I think that we're all kind of cheering for him to get the gold medal in that, especially when you consider sort of the questions around cross-country skiing from the Sochi Games, which we led the show off on. All right, Kevin, as I said, in 1 week's time, we will be starting our daily coverage of these games. You can continue to listen to our previews in the days ahead if you're excited about that. There's also some great previews out there that are independent from us. Netflix has a couple of them out there. NBC has a podcast you can listen to. The CBC just launched its Olympic podcast a couple days ago. Lots of material now floating out. The Canadian Press put its preview out yesterday. It's getting down to crunch time. It's getting quite exciting. A week to go. It took us a while to warm up to this one, but now that it's in front of me, I'm starting to shiver. I'm starting to think about what I'll be doing, and I'm looking at the clock right now and going, God, can it be a week ahead already? I just want it there now. I just want to be staring in front of the computer going, Anyway, all right. So figure skating will come out a little later today. Probably some speed skating stuff in the next couple days as we work those previews through. But until that time, Kevin, I'll let you, as always, say goodbye to the show.
Duane mentioned there's other Olympic podcasts out there now, but come back to the original. Come back to the longest running podcast about the Olympics on the face of this planet, which is the Five Rings Podcast, established in 2014 and still moving on, still going forward, still talking about the Olympics. And you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We will be back next week with one more regular show before the dailies, and then Friday with the opening ceremonies, and pretty much every day until February 25th. You will get the Five Rings Podcast daily from the studio here, from Duane's place as well. And you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/sports podcasting network, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. But if you want to listen live, there's only one place you can do so live during the Olympics, and that's youtube.com/sports podcasting network, 10 a.m. every day for our Five Rings Daily. And as always, until very soon, get ready for PyeongChang.